Welcome to the Rules of Language Learning. My name is Olly Richards. Now, let me ask you a very important question. Would you take business advice from someone who's stinking rich? You would? Okay, good. Me too. Now, what if I told you that that person got rich by playing the lottery? Okay, now the business advice from that person suddenly doesn't sound quite so tempting anymore, does it? No. See, you just realised that the person that you thought held all the secrets actually just got lucky and doesn't know the first thing about business. Seems obvious. So, when it comes to language learning, what are you doing taking language learning advice from native speakers? I should probably explain myself, but before I do, please take a second to subscribe to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. It will help me fight the good fight and spread the word about language learning. Look, I remember when I first started learning Cantonese. Now, in case you don't know, Cantonese is the language of Hong Kong, but I wouldn't blame you if you didn't know that, because Cantonese is like, nobody learns Cantonese. It's not a normal thing to do. So I was pretty much in the dark about how to go about learning that language. All the books and the courses that were available were just rubbish, and I would get all of my Cantonese learning wisdom from native speakers. And it was always hilarious, the things that I was advised to do. In fact, the first thing I was told to do by these people was not to bother learning Cantonese at all, and instead learn Mandarin, which might actually have been quite good advice. But just as often, I would hear things like, "Oh, you're learning Cantonese? Well, you should just watch loads of Cantonese movies. You'll learn how real Cantonese people talk. We have lots of funny idioms in Cantonese," and so on and so forth. Have you ever been given the watch lots of movies advice before? Hit the like button on this video if you have. So at first, I looked up to these native speakers. I thought they were these bastions of authority, whose advice I should heed. Because after all, these guys speak the language perfectly. They speak the language that I'm trying to learn. So I should listen to them, right? But I quickly learned that I could quite safely ignore most language learning advice coming my way from those native speakers. Why? Well, there are a few big problems. Yes, native speakers are well-intentioned. Yes, native speakers speak the language much better than you. Yes, native speakers often know a lot about the language. But they have no idea what it's like to be learning that language. Or often what it's like to learn any foreign language, for that matter. They have no idea about how their language looks, feels, or sounds to someone who hasn't grown up with it. They have no idea about how confusing the grammar feels, how weird the pronunciation sounds, and how all the vocabulary just sounds all the same to your ear. So at what point did you think that they are qualified to give you advice about how to learn their language? If you had a friend who just won the lottery, you wouldn't turn to them for business advice, right? Despite them being much richer than you. Now, your really skinny friend, that guy who can just eat cake all day long and won't put on a pound of fat. Well, you wouldn't ask them how to lose weight, even though they're super thin. And the same thing goes for language learning. You see, the process of learning a language is fundamentally different from knowing or speaking that language. Successfully learning a foreign language as an adult has much more to do with things like time management, focus, self-confidence, as learning the words or the grammar of that language. And that's why people like me spend comparatively little time talking about the mechanics of languages, and much more time talking about the mechanics of yourself and how you work, how you learn. Learning how to learn, as Barbara Oakley would put it. Someone who hasn't gone through the language learning process themselves as an adult simply cannot understand what goes into it. And no matter how well-intentioned they are, they're really not in any position to be giving you advice. So don't pay any attention to language learning advice from native speakers, ladies and gentlemen, unless, of course, that person actually has some meaningful language learning experience. In which case you can just forget about everything I've just said. It's just that in reality, most people don't in fact have any meaningful language learning experience as an adult. Take the case of your teacher, for example. And this is where it starts to get interesting. You see, your teacher is likely to be a native speaker of the language. So does that mean that you should or shouldn't take language learning advice from them? Well, it depends. When I taught English back in the day, it was once in a blue moon that I'd meet an English teacher who had learned another language to a good level. They might be able to explain grammar to you, but are they really qualified to advise on successful language learning? It's debatable. And does that mean that there are potentially thousands of English teachers out there who really shouldn't be dishing out any advice about language learning? Does it mean that? Well, I will leave you to ponder that one. Of course, you may be lucky enough to have a native speaker teacher who has also learned other languages themselves as an adult and been successful at it, giving them not only language expertise, but also language learning expertise. And all I can say is, if you have a teacher like that, hold on to them and do not let them go. But until that day, next time you're at a party and you meet a native speaker of the language that you're learning and you sense that advice coming on, smile, thank them, and take their advice with a very large pinch of salt. Unless, of course, you think I'm wrong about all this, in which case I'd love to hear about it in a comment beneath this video. But if you ask me, simply don't take language learning advice from native speakers. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did enjoy it and you'd like me to continue this series of the rules of language learning, then you can let me know by liking this video. Also, if you'd like to be notified when I upload new videos every week, then you can subscribe to the channel using the big red button below, and the videos will pop right up in your news feed.